one I was seeing consistently, and she was finally the one who brought up ADHD. And the first time she did, I was like, like, I'm Jessica Carter. Like, I'm an overachiever. Like, you have no idea, like, everything that I've done and everything I've accomplished. There's no way I could have ADHD. And she just let it go. And a couple months later, I was, they had taken me off, and she had taken me off another medication, because during this whole time I was still having side effects, just really struggling with trying to find the right medication, and was still cutting very consistently. And we had got off one medication. I was having a lot of trouble with focus. And she said, that medication you're on is a secondary treatment for ADHD. And I was like, oh. She's like, yep, that's why you're having trouble concentrating. Like, you have it. And it was the first time where I was able to, like, explore what that would look like. Or, like, I was like, fine, like, let's see, like, what else do I have to lose at this point? Like, I've tried everything else. And sure enough, the medication in the low dosages made me so sleepy and lethargic, which is exactly what it does to people who have ADHD. And I was starting to be able to do some research on it and, like, really, like, uncover the whole, like, female aspect of ADHD and how hidden it is, and, like, the fact that it causes you to have low self-esteem, anxiety, which was a huge problem for me. As well. I haven't even talked about, like, full-blown anxiety attacks, being in a space and, like, needing to leave because there's too many people. And just all that, like, other aspects. Like, it was like, oh gosh. And then, so it was great to have that language again. Like, I was finally able to have the language and, like, the understanding of what was going on and why those things had happened. But it's just a diagnosis. It's not a solution, right? So I was still cutting consistently. And at that point, I had moved on to a razor, and, like, it was a full-blown addiction at that point too. It wasn't like it was a coping mechanism. It was like I needed to do it routinely in order to, like, feel like I could be okay. Like, and it was very, like you were saying, how did you hide it? Like, I would only do it in my car. Like, I never did it in my parents' house. Like, I would never, there was so much routine around it. Like, I always cut in threes. I would cut my stomach so people wouldn't, like, it was completely consuming so much of my life. And that was kind of like a crazy, like, I'd been dealing with mental illness, like, I was open and talking to it about people, and then to have this whole other aspect of, like, my coping mechanism has now become an addiction. And, like, this is the most important relationship and dynamic in my life. Like, that was a really hard thing to have to confront. It got to a point where, I mean, one of that one therapist in particular, or psychiatrist, was just absolutely incredible. I'm so thankful for her. When I had cut one of the first times I had cut, when I was seeing her, she was just like, you were feeling a lot of pain. Like, that's your coping mechanism. I'm not going to take your coping mechanism away. Yeah. And that was a huge, like, oh wow, like, I wish someone else would have said that to me earlier on, so I didn't have all the shame. And because I think that's a huge other part of it too. It's like, I have a moment of release, and then it's immediately back to, I hate myself, I'm horrible, I'm whatever. Like, you're like wanting that moment of release to, like, prime yourself for all the self-hate again. Yeah. Like, and that's what you're getting off of as much as, like, the release of seeing the blood. And I think that's hard for people to sometimes understand. Like, you don't get, like, long periods of joy from doing this. Yeah. Like, it's just a freaking cycle.
And that's why it becomes addiction.
Yeah. Exactly. And so it was really... So at first she was like, okay, it's your coping mechanism. But once it started getting much more in depth and it was happening way too frequently, she said, I'm going to have to stop seeing you as a patient because, like, you're no longer interested in this process. And it was like, holy crap, like this is the person who diagnosed me with ADHD. Like I had made so much progress and like had slipped a little bit, like in my mind, but like nope, like you were just using a coping mechanism.
More shame when she said that.
It was more like, oh, like this is real. Like it wasn't even ashamed. It was more like, oh, like it was like a wake up call. Like it was like a slap in the face in a good way. It was like, she's like, I can't help you if you don't want to be helped. Like you're having a relationship with your addiction. Like you can't have a relationship with a psychiatrist at the same, like you're gonna have to pick one. And so like I went home that day and like threw out all my razors and like all of my hiding spots and like all of that type of stuff. But like that process of like letting go was so scary. Like it took so much to like actually throw those things away. But I think it finally had, she'd also said too, you know, like when are you going to realize whenever you cut yourself, you're cutting the little girl inside you? And it was. And it was. It was probably like one of the most like breakthrough like aha moments that I had was like, God, like I really am just like punishing this little girl who never got the comfort or care that she needed. And so I think that like really hit home too. And it was probably part of the reason why I was able to kind of let go, was she had finally said it in a way that made sense.
How old were you at that time?
I think I was 25, 26, somewhere in like my mid 20s. I mean, I was still like working full time and like, you know, I was still a productive member of society. Like I just had this whole other aspect that people just weren't necessarily aware of. Yeah, I was lucky to have, I still am very close with people from high school and even from elementary school, like some of those connections that I had made. So there was definitely people I could be true with. But you also lose friendships with mental illness too, which is really difficult. You know, like people grow apart, like they don't know how to handle it, you don't know how to handle it. And so there's like a whole grieving process that goes around with that too. It's really hard to be able to just sit with someone and be like, I'm not okay, and like you're gonna just let me not be okay. Like there's only like maybe a couple people who have really been able to embrace that. And there's even been cycles where like, you know, we have not been as close, but I do have a couple friends that have really been touchstones, which has been huge. And each of them are dealing with their own, you know, mental health issue too. And I think that probably helped them be able to have the compassion. But that definitely.
I mean, that's really my purpose in all this, right?
Yeah.
To help people understand that our society really emphasizes like, be okay, move forward, be productive, be extroverted, right? But to just sit in that sometimes and hold space and allow people to just not be okay every second of every day.
Yeah.
Is okay.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's like one of the things, like, you know, like the theme of like the darkness inside, like I just want to shine a light on that. Like I just want to shine a light and let it be seen and felt, and to sit in that uncomfortable, Brene Brown is, I love her, but like the whole embracing the wilderness, like that uncomfort or discomfort that you have from just like, like just shine a light on it and let it be and see what happens. Like that's really like why I volunteered to do this. And like, I hope, now that I'm at a place, so like finally was properly diagnosed with ADHD, was still going through therapy, but it's amazing. Like, so you have to have the proper diagnosis and you have to be on the proper medication if that is what your diagnosis requires. So another psychiatrist finally was like, you've been on so many medications, like, have you ever had genomic testing? And I was like, no, what's that? He's like, it basically tests how your body processes drugs. So after being in therapy for literally 10 years and being on meds for 7 of those 10 years, they did genomic testing and realized I have a genetic mutation and my body doesn't actually process the medicinal dosage that's not the right medicinal dosage for me.
Wow.
So even though I'd been on medication for 7 years, it had some therapeutic value, but it wasn't the right therapeutic value. And so it was finally getting that worked out. Like, and it's hard for me to have like, even after all this time, like, and all the tools that I have learned throughout my therapy experience, it still is uncomfortable to be like, I'm so proud of myself. Mm-hmm. But one of the proudest things, and like one of the things I can say to other people who are like in the middle of it, is like, it is a process and it really sucks, but like you just have to stick with it. Like within the last 2 to 3 years, I am not actively in therapy, but I'm see a psychiatrist regularly for my meds and all that stuff. But now that I have the proper diagnosis and the proper medication, I am able to use the tools that I had been learning that whole time, and can actually catch myself, going down a really dark, stupid path of negative self-talk, and I can stop myself. Right. And I can actually control what I'm thinking and bring it back into focus and not be all or nothing or completely out of bounds. Right. And like so even though it felt like nothing was happening for those 7 years, like I was internalizing all of that, and again, like giving myself the language and the tools to use, and now I can apply it. But like I was the one who had to do it, and it takes so much effing energy to get yourself when you're in that place to do it, but like you just have to do it. It isn't easy, and it is a process. And I think one of the best things that I've been able to get out of therapy is like to have like the space to have the compassion for like my friends who weren't able to understand it, or like my roommates were like, it was like devastating. It was like such a like punch to the gut when like they couldn't understand. But now like and even with like my parents, like sometimes I wish that they would have been able to do more, but like that's just not what they were able to do. And so I wish, and hopefully I'm an instructional designer, like education or whatever, like eventually my goal is to help develop some curriculum like for friends and like family. I think it would be it's too close to my heart to like deal with patients, like people who've gone through it. But if I could help other people understand, like if your daughter's cutting, like, or son cutting, it's a coping mechanism. Don't scream and yell at them. Like just give them the space to be seen and heard, and say like, you're feeling this pain, I understand. And like the fact that like getting into the therapy is only one part of much longer, like that's not the solution, like that's just one step, like, and you have to be present and show up for them, and give people the language to use, so that when a friend comes to you and says that they're depressed, like this is how you can respond in a way that's okay. Because I think that's a lot of it, is that when you confront a friend who like they love you so much, like they don't want to say the wrong thing to set you off, and so like nothing gets said, and then neither of you feel like you've been seen or heard or acknowledged. And like that's where like just really building up the language around, let's talk about this, like let's figure out how to be there for the people who are going through it, and acknowledge like the weight that kind of also has on you as like a person too. And I'm finally at a place where I can be comfortable with acknowledging like it was taxing to my friends and my family, and I totally get that. I don't have to own that. I can acknowledge that is a sign of their love for me, and just leave it at that. Like my desire is always to like go and fix it for other people, which is funny that like that's my goal, is to like help other people.
Oh, you are. You are.
Yeah. And it just is, it's so difficult to explain. Like it's so difficult to put into words. the fact that like it isn't, even though I'm crying and I'm upset, like there's healing that comes from telling the stories. And I think like coming full circle with like the family aspect of it, like yes, I had inherited mental health issues, and I also didn't have great models for emotional management and like coping mechanisms, because parents are the product of their parents who are the product of their parents. But I love the fact that the title of this is Choosing Tomorrow, because so much of mental health doesn't feel like a choice, but like what you do to turn it from mental illness into a mental health process is the choices that you make, and like following through on those choices. Like, and if I can make a choice to actively break the cycle, then like there won't be a fourth generation of suicide in my family. You know, like we can finally talk about it, and I can see it happening too. A lot of my cousins have been diagnosed with ADHD or have gone into therapy. You know, we're actually seeing the fact that like we're breaking the cycle that has been such a stronghold on the family. And I just hope that like that can be modeled for our children, and that it just keeps getting, if there's going to be the genetics where people have it, at least they'll be able to have the tools to deal with it. Like I have a master's degree, I have a very good job, like I'm a successful person and I'm happy with who I am and like where I'm at in life. Like I want people to understand that what I've been through and the struggles I have, like I shouldn't be ashamed of them or defined by them, you know, like I still am exactly who I am. And I don't want to be, I mean, it's a little bit scary to like put it out there and like feel like people are going to judge you. But I mean, I hope what people are taking away is like, to be talked about, and it needs to be, you need to shine a light on it in order for us to get out of the darkness.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Thank you so much.
Yes.
What's your advice to parents?
Understand that it's okay that you don't understand. So I think get educated. There's tons of really in-depth programs out there. NAMI is a great one that they do really, really in-depth education programs.
What is it again?
NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. Some family members, not my immediate, but extended families have gone through that, and it's given them, again, the language and like the tools to be able to understand it. But just like there's enough resources online now, like look it up, and just don't attach judgment, like, and if get them in therapy, go to therapy with them, get therapy for yourself. Like,
I think a lot.
Know as a parent, like you're doing the best you can given the circumstances that you were born into. And the only thing that you can do is get educated and get understanding and awareness in order to break the cycle. Like, don't be scared of leaning into it and finding out. That's the only way that you're going to be able to be there for your kids, is really to just show up and work yourself too. But I think as a parent, to be able to say like, I see you're struggling, I'm struggling too. Like, let's struggle through this together. Like, that's, I think, such a huge thing for parents to understand. Like, we're not looking to you for all the answers. Like, we really just want you to see that we're in pain, and say, I don't want you to be in pain, but I see that you're in pain. And you don't have to fix it. Like, we'll work towards fixing it together, but it's not an immediate thing, you know? Just, I think so many times parents will turn their heads away because it's so hard. Even if you get your kid in therapy, like, job's done, like, you really have to lean into it and embrace that uncomfortableness and realize it's not a reflection of you. You know, like, that's true love, is like going through the mess and the uncomfortable parts with them. My process was, I was still in a family that was operating in a certain way, and I was changing the way I was operating, and that was a huge disconnect. And so like learning how to set boundaries and things like that with my family, which is still something we're like dealing with and struggling with. But like I said at the beginning, like, I love my parents. I never doubted that they loved me. And I don't have any ill will or blame or anger towards them for anything that happened in my mental health journey. Like, I can fully recognize now, like, they did the best that they could. And hopefully me talking about it will mean that, like, I can do better for my kids. You know, like, I can do more.
Good for you. Thank you. Mm-hmm. You're awesome. Awesome. Cool.
That's the other hard part about cutting is like part of you wants it to leave a mark.
Right.
Because it's like a testament to what you went through, but at the same time, every time I look down to check my watch, I'm reminded of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want me to move my arm or anything like that.